My guest today is Mike Jarmuz. You talked to me in Amsterdam about this fascinating thing about using AI for legal work, almost like magic that you were able to get AI to do work for you.
And I love that you were really interested in AI and you haven't really went down the rabbit hole. But since Bitcoin, I can't think of anything else that has been as interesting and that will just take every free minute you have than learning about AI. And it's really there at this point. It's probably the second most exciting, cool thing on the planet next to Bitcoin. I've been following it for a while, and I got a legal bill. Well, we started this company, and we had an attorney, and I eventually got a bill, and it was absolutely astronomical. It was crazy. So I called the attorney, and it was like, stop working, don't do anything. And then it was like, well, what can we do? Like, I'd been following AI, 20, 30 minutes a night, with some YouTube videos and a couple of things, you can get up to speed pretty quickly. And it's kind of like the personal computer revolution. Like, all you need is enough to piddle, if you just have enough, and then you can just start playing, and you just figure it out, what's that Napoleon quote? I engage and then I react. So we took basically everything that we had as far as all of our corporate documents, and then we took everything that we needed from a regulatory oversight, legal, advisor perspective, and we made our own agent that really specialized in what we needed. And we did not use that attorney again for that entire rest of that process until the very, very end, when we absolutely needed a human being to step in and we were dealing with FINRA at the time. But, the entire beginning part, we paid a ton of money. It was an absolute waste of money. And by the way, that was the easiest part. If I could go back and do that part, has AI written all over it, that was the easiest part. All the real work came after we told the attorneys to stop. It was just so much back and forth. And when you train up an agent to do a special task for you and just be an expert in one thing, it's just super powerful. Like, if you're a founder right now, I don't know how you're not using AI for everything that you're doing. Whether that's software development, whether that's it. We joke, okay? We have a question for our lawyer, legal. We joke. We're on a Zoom call, and we'll ask the agent that we trained up, and we're like, oh, that's $1,000. We're like, that answer right there in 10 seconds, that's $1,000, and we'd had to wait a day and a half. I've really perfected it myself with legal. Our VP of engineering, he did no AI before we started. So we're building Thunder Funder, we're working, and I'm like pleading with him. I'm like, please, man, please. He's like, no, it's not there. He's like, it's not good. He's like, maybe it's good for legal, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, please, please, please. Sending him links. Finally, like the other day, he said to me, he's like, I'm so glad that I got upset. He's like, I've 3x'd my output. He's like, he's full on beast mode, right? In his engineer land, right, for what he's good with, and as far as podcast pulling summaries, YouTube descriptions, those are simple things, right? And you can perfect it, right? SEO, this, that, and the other thing. I'm not very good with all that stuff, but all that stuff that you do, those tasks, and we're right at a point. I actually saw a video. Claude, Anthropic, just released an update yesterday with a new API. Okay, it's a computer, all right, where you're basically in a virtual machine right now. The test is a virtual machine, and you are giving it control in a browser window. You can pull up an Excel spreadsheet over here, and you can pull up Google over here, and you can say, I need help completing this form. Use the information from this spreadsheet to complete this form. And it takes control of your browser window. You see every process that it's doing, searching for a name of company, and you see it inputting it and clicking submit and being done with it. And like that's where we're going the next step.
Okay, so I hear people calling AI a hoax, no big deal, but you straight up, you're seeing that it's going to have a huge effect on a lot of our jobs, isn't it?
Anyone who's calling AI a hoax and it's no big deal, like you should never talk to that person again. You should never listen to another thing that they're saying because they have no idea. And you know, for example, okay, you know, there was this thing, the taking control of your browser window. Okay. There was a AI startup. There still is, it's called Hyperwrite. Okay. And let's just say that you're doing this chat with me right now. And we're talking about AI and whatever. You know, if you were promoting your podcast and your YouTube channel, you might go to 3 or 4 other recent interviews and videos that I put out, and you might comment, "Hey, hey, we love Muzz. We were talking about AI. Here's a link to our show," right? And then you have to like manually find those things that I was on and paste the comment or whatever, or you hire some maybe virtual assistant for a low amount of money and they do some of these tasks. Literally, I mean, I did this, I tried it. And it was just like, I told it to find the most recent interviews with Samson Mao and, you know, leave this type of a comment that directs them to our interview with Samson Mao. And I watched it do it in my browser while I could focus on something else. It would go to you. It was the first step, go to youtube.com. Second, search for Samson Mao. Third, you know, and I told it other instructions, like only put it on videos that have over this many views that are within the past year. It found the video, it opened it up, it posted the comment, like all for me, you know? And yeah, it's not perfect. It's hokey. Sometimes it gets caught up. Sometimes a pop-up comes up and doesn't know what to do and it can't recognize. But like it's getting there to a point where you're going to be a small business owner or operator or whatever you're doing, and you're going to have a different agent for all of these little tasks that you do. Okay. I just coded one up for my taxes. Okay. I now have a financial guru, tax expert, everything. I'm considering this Puerto Rico move. I put all that shit in there. Okay, the guy knows everything about Act 20 and Act 60 and moving to Puerto Rico and how many days I can be there and whatever question I have. Oh, hey, you got a balance on this credit card. It's 10% interest. Here's a promotion. You can get it for 0 and yada, yada, yada. Like if you just take the time to save your prompts, learn a little bit about prompt engineering and code up those specific roles that you need in your life. You're going to need a tax help. You know, you're going to need an accountant, bookkeeping, whatever. And it's just so easy to actually just drop the stuff in there. I mean, I took like 12 1099s and just like in my tax guide, just like dumped them all in there. And I'm like, give me something great that I can use and I can deliver to my accountant to make his job easier, right? And it's like, boom, here you go. And it's just, it's so powerful. I just feel bad for everyone that's not using it and playing with it.
All right. And you don't have a heavy coding background, that the stuff you're doing is something that mere mortals can do. Is that true?
Oh, totally. 100%. So, you know, with coding, I actually, you know, got a little crazy one night and I made Pac Muzz. Pac Muzz the game. I got to send it to you. But, you know, it was a little video game where a wizard goes around the screen and he picks up little Bitcoins. And at the end, you know, the sunglasses come on. Cool. Nice job, dude. And I mean, I made that game in like an hour and it looks cool and it runs in the browser and it was a super fun experience. And, you know, that's the extent of any kind of like engineering, coding, real work that I've done with it. But you could literally drop your entire code base in there and ask it to find errors, ask it to improve things and make it better. And people are having like tremendous success with this.
Again, so that is going to have a big effect, isn't it? It's on Lightning Ventures even, if people start using this for real world Bitcoin related coding or not?
I mean, I think it's probably going to change really just about everything that you can imagine. Except for maybe the guy who has to show up at your door to fix your AC.
Yes.
You know, I mean, that guy will be using AI to determine what's wrong with your AC. But that human being and some of those things, you know, they're not going to be disrupted. But you could literally start a company now. You could start whatever you want to do for a fraction of the cost of what it used to be just 4+ years ago. I mean, like you, Tom, right now, if you wanted to release an app, if you wanted to do something, to make a browser extension, I mean, we could like make a browser extension here. I mean, I've seen it done in real time. You know, you could do nearly anything that you want to do very quickly, cheaply, and easily, and it's gonna change the pace that we innovate and the cost dramatically, you know? And I mean, we're seeing it with us right now. I mean, we're seeing it with Thunder Funder and the things that we're doing, and we're able to do a lot more and spend a lot less. Orange Pill app Mateo, he's a big guy where I said to him one time, hey, you know, I really want you to code up this ticketing thing because we're doing a Satoshi Nakamoto and I really want to sell tickets on. And literally it was OpenAI over a weekend. Monday, the ticket page was done. And that's not a developer. That's not, you know, hey guys, we're going to pull an all-nighter and we're going to get this thing done. It's just a whole new way of getting things done. And let me say one thing real quick. So I was making the Muzz game, which I'm going to see if I can find. And, you know, in Pac-Man, there's the end of the game where you have Miss Pac-Man, right? And you're running around chasing after Miss Pac-Man. And I was telling Claude, hey, Pac-Muzz needs a princess to save. You know what I mean? And I want to create this female Pac-Muzz kind of, you know, at the end of the game. And Claude said to me, I'm not comfortable creating a female whatever for your game. You know, the robot's telling me it's not comfortable, like HAL 9000 from, you know, 2001. And I couldn't get the thing to create a female Pac-Muzz. You know, I wasn't being vulgar or anything. This wasn't like a really explicit thing. I was just like, you know, can you make it a pretty little princess kind of thing that I can save? And it didn't feel comfortable.
Wow.
So that shit scares me, but you know they got to fix that eventually, right?
Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself before we dive into your entire life?
Just a little bit, not my entire life. I was born on a Tuesday. It was in the early 80s. My company is Lightning Ventures, and we invest in Bitcoin startups exclusively. It's a little bit different than your average venture capitalist firm. We allow for other people to get started on their investing journey, investing small amounts, learning as you go. That's how I started. I psychotically invested in over 1,500 companies when I started angel investing. Not Bitcoin companies, of course, a few of them, until I started Lightning Ventures to focus exclusively on Bitcoin startups and Bitcoin companies. And also, I'm passionate about bringing that to other people so that they can get started rather than just cutting a big check to a VC firm and letting them invest your money. I think it's a lot of fun when you get to make your own decisions and you can invest small amounts and those numbers can go up as you learn the process. The big announcement and where we met, Tom, in Amsterdam was Thunder Funder, which is a new regulation crowdfunding portal that maybe we'll talk about in a little bit. But that is not crowdfunding like, you know, Aunt Mary's surgery and that type of thing. That's a different kind of crowdfunding. This is equity crowdfunding, where you're actually making a real investment that nearly almost anyone can do. So that's what I'm passionate about.
We can go to your website and then you can pick individual companies out of there. It's not like you're investing in a whole basket of companies, right?
Right. And our first deal should go live very soon. Within maybe 24 to 48 hours, our first deal will be live. So the Lightning Ventures Syndicate is for accredited investors. By the way, that's a whole nother topic on what's an accredited investor. But we've got plenty of those in there. And some people aren't comfortable or aren't able to meet that required ridiculous bar that is our government that they put to limit and keep people out of these investments, so they can go to Thunder Funder and invest in everything there without having to meet that income threshold and those other qualifications.
But if I read it right on Lightning Ventures, that you could invest in kind of a basket of companies where you pick those companies, or is it still you pick your own?
Right. That's the fun of it, is it's on a deal by deal basis. You're your own angel investor on a deal by deal basis. So you might wake up and get a deal that says Tom Nelson's syndicate invites you to invest in this climate startup. Okay, so if Tom Nelson's syndicate just does climate because Tom's an expert on climate and that's it, and if I'm interested in that, I would join Tom Nelson's syndicate for free to get my eyes on whatever his deals are. So he's got something that removes cow farts and saves the world. I might want to invest $1,000 or $2,000 in that deal because he's an expert in that. So in our syndicate, it's not generalist; it's really just Bitcoin stuff. So you might get something for, Swan or Strike or Unchained. Those are some of the larger companies that we've been able to invest in and do deals through our syndicate, our group.
So I would say, as a climate realist, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to invest in a cow fart fighting company from me. But have you seen a lot of that as you're looking around? Do you see a lot of climate tech companies that seriously are trying to do stuff like that?
I do, and I might pull up my psychotic spreadsheet here of over 1,500 companies. That is not my forte. I actually don't really like anything that has to do with these type of climate deals or those type of stuff. But I made it a big priority to join the best syndicates and the most talented venture capitalists that put deals out. So I joined a lot of these groups. They are generalist, right? So maybe they're doing last mile delivery one day, and then they're doing, robotic dentistry the next day, and kind of everything that you can imagine on the tip of the sphere of technology. But there is a lot. I think there's actually a company called Mootral, Mootral. But I think that they're actually fighting the cow farts. I think I got that deal sent to me somehow. I'm not sure how they do that. But there are a lot of those type of deals, and to be honest with you, I don't believe I've ever invested in one of them. Those type of things just really don't appeal to me.
Just as an aside, I just saw an article about Bill Gates endorsing some vaccine against cow farts that you give to cattle to make some fart less or something. Incredibly crazy.
They should give that to humans.
Give it to Bill first, I think. Let's see. Oh, one thing that fascinates me about you is you have kind of seen everything in terms of these companies, right? That you've had such a broad, people have been sending you all these details, and you've invested in lots of different companies, and you've seen how things have panned out, right? You've been in the business long enough to see things that were hyped incredibly that worked out and some that didn't work out. You must have learned a ton through all that.
Yeah. I mean, clearly you can tell from me here that, I have a Harvard MBA. But I got my start investing in late stage secondary offerings. My first private company investment was in Lyft, actually. Lyft was a private company. I had heard about it. I took one or two in San Francisco, which they weren't in every market at that point in time. And I was able to invest in them, and those are later stage, right? The company's already worth a couple $100 million. So the amounts are higher as far as the minimums go, but there's a less likely chance that you're going to lose all your money. It could still happen, but if something is worth, a few $100 million, it's not likely that it's going to go to zero. It might not be the best exit ever, it might go public and might not be a great outcome for you, or it could be a fantastic outcome, but it's likely you're not going to lose all your money. And that's what I was trying not to do at that point in time, is I just don't want to lose all my money. So, I mean, I've probably hit about 50 IPOs since I started in that late stage stuff, Spotify, DraftKings, One Medical, Wish.com, Rent the Runway. I mean, just name it. We had a very robust IPO market for a long time there. I mean, Poshmark, Robinhood, Airbnb, Uber. Not all of them were great. Some of them were fantastic. And some of them were just okay. But when you're investing in those later stage companies, you don't have to keep your money tied up for that long. And in a low interest rate environment, good IPO cycle, every couple of months you had an IPO and there's a lockup period and there's a lot of experience that you get going through this. I had no education. You read the Jason Calacanis book, Angel, you get all excited because a $25,000 investment in Uber's seed round was worth $100 million at the IPO. And then, you want to learn as much as you can about this. So you're learning about founders and team and traction and tips and just investing a small amount and then reading the updates from the founders, getting as much information as you can and just learning. And if something goes to zero and you invested $2,500, it's really not the end of the world. And the biggest mistake that I see people make with early stage investing is they'll come in and they'll invest 50 grand in 2 deals. And then by the time I talk to them, I'm like, hey, you're getting started with angel investing? And they're like, no, I'm never doing that again. I put 50 grand in 2 deals. They both went to zero. Well, let's put 5 grand into 20 deals and then kind of see how it goes. You can always invest more later, right? You usually always get another opportunity to invest in that company after they break out, after they start to move in the right direction.
So have you had a spreadsheet of your own that has maybe 1,500 companies where you're keeping track of what's happening? I think it's amazing.
I do. I just sent you a list. I actually just sorted it because they don't call it climate. They call it clean tech. Okay. And I've actually invested in probably about 20 of these companies right here. And I just sent it to you in the chat. Now, some of those are going to be electric battery type of charging stations for cars and like other things, right? But I'm just trying to find anything that might be in your world with any of these companies that you may have heard on. Maybe you find that cow fart thing in there somewhere. But yeah, I've invested in over 2,200 unique deals. So, but look, we're talking about a lot of $1,000 checks, a lot of $2,000 checks. The biggest check I ever wrote personally was 100 grand, and I wrote it twice, and that's massive from a little guy like me. But you can learn a lot by investing small amounts and the stories of how things work. I mean, I've got plenty so far. Just something is Southeast Asia's largest private company. It's worth $500 million and it goes to zero. That definitely happens. No warning, no heads up. Also, you put $1,000 in something and you never get an update. You never get an update. You have no idea what they're doing. And then 2.5 years later, the thing's worth $1 billion. I mean, I've had that happen too. No clue what the company's up to. So, you learn as you go. And that's basically what I've done.
So what is your process in a typical day? I'm fascinated by trying to keep track of these companies. Are you just reading all the time online? Or I think you're reading a lot of books, you said elsewhere too? Or how do you spend your time?
Well, okay. So there's pre-Lightning Ventures and then post-Lightning Ventures. Pre-Lightning Ventures, I was working for a medical startup. I also owned that bar on the Lower East Side. I had a cafe that I ran with my wife. That was a fun experience. I did real estate in New York. I was in the music business for 10 plus years before that. So definitely an eclectic. Done a lot of different things. And I was just dialing up my own deal flow. And once I was investing in the late stage stuff, okay, they're all names that you know and love. You get a deal for, name a company that you love, right? Maybe you use Airtable or Notion or, any of these type of things. And then all of a sudden you get a deal for it. Stripe, right? For payments, Stripe, the companies that you love that are private, you basically get them sent to you. And you're looking and evaluating the deal. And these are oftentimes secondary transactions, which means that early stage employees, shareholders, et cetera, are actually selling their shares. which is not necessarily a bad sign. There's just things that can happen. There's life events that take place. And if you were one of the first 40 employees at one of these companies and now they're worth $1 billion or so, it's not a bad sign at all, right? So I started investing in those companies and then learning, right? And the learning is a major process. Okay, it's everything that you could imagine. YC's got a lot of material. Again, Calacanis, love him or hate him, he's got a ton of educational material out on the world. And I went to a financial summit conference, and I was showing someone what I was doing because we were in a good IPO market. So if I invested $10,000 to $25,000 into Spotify or whatever, okay, if in 10 to 16 months I got maybe a 4 to 6x on my money back, I would just do that all day long. I would just rinse and repeat, right? And then, do you keep the shares? Do you not keep the shares? You have the experience of a company going public, ringing the bell. The shares end up landing in your account. It's very exciting. There's also a lockup period for 6 months or so that can change on when you can sell them or not sell them, right? And I met someone, I was showing him what I was doing. He's like, hey, you're doing great, but if you really want to do this, you got to do the early stage stuff. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to lose all my money. And he's like, but this you just have to. So that was really, and once I started with that, I never went back to the late stage, pre-IPO, later stage things again. It was just like, it was like going from the occasional marijuana smoking to like you shot heroin. Okay. There's no recreational fun then. But yeah, and then learning from these early stage things and talk about really the cutting edge of everything that's going on in the world. The robotic lawnmowers and the drugs that make your dog live longer, and like a million things, right, that you could imagine, whether it's in healthcare or just everything that's going on in the world. And then I started investing in those, and you can use trackers. You can use a lot of tools. You can use Crunchbase. You can use Owler. You can use some of these things to basically track all the news and stories from your absurd amount of investments. And you'll get like a digest every day of everything. Oh, this company is a payments company in Africa that I invested in 6 months ago. They just did a partnership with Western Union, blah, blah, blah. So there's always activity kind of going on and things to follow. And then you get the actual real updates from the founders. A lot of times it's redacted, whatever they can share, because, just because Tom Nelson invests $1,000 in a company, they might not tell you everything for those small check investors. And just learning as you go. And that's pretty much it. And maybe you can be helpful. I'm the job whisperer, right? All my friends that are looking for work and whatever they're doing, I would get so many good leads for, hey, this company needs a director of marketing, or they need somebody in data analytics or whatever. So I'm really a good resource for that. And yeah, it's just a journey of learning pretty much.
So you mentioned that that pill you can give to dogs that that makes them live 8 years longer. That is a real thing that's going to be coming out in the public soon?
It is. And I actually just got a very good update from that company. And they're worth about $400 and some million right now. I'm pulling it up on my sheet. I don't want to wait too long here to find it, but yeah. So it was an early stage deal, and it was clinical trials. And by the way, I hate the biotech. I hate the medical devices. I hate that stuff. That is a great way to lose a bunch of money. I even had a slide on it in one of my early presentations about that's just a great way to lose your money. And you wake up one day and the placebo does better than the drug, and you got a whole bunch of problems. But this was one in particular that it looked interesting. And you look at the signaling, right? You look at the co-investors. If Peter Thiel is investing and Naval Ravikant is investing, and, all of these people that spent, months doing due diligence and giving the founder and team a colonoscopy to get the big check. Can you be the last $1,000 in that deal? Can you be the last $5,000 in that full round? Because if you can be the last $5,000 in an $8 million funding round from Tom Nelson that all of these world-class investors are investing in, that is exactly where you want to be.
Okay. I was going to ask, do you use AI at all to keep track of what's going on, like to filter your news or anything? Do you use it in that sense?
So what I would love to do that I didn't do before was build a relational database sort of data set of what I have here, because what I did was, as I hired some people, or I hired someone to basically take my crazy spreadsheet that had the link to the company, the platform that I invested on, the name of the group, the date, the stage, the market, what type of instrument was it? Was it a safe or equity, whatever? What were the terms of the deal? And were there pro rata, not, etc. And basically put this into a view that I could maybe, hey, I want to see everything in healthcare. How about healthcare, but also dentistry? Okay. Or how about healthcare, but medical devices or whatever. So I had a little bit of something built there. Now it's incredible. Now I could just literally take this spreadsheet and just dump it into one of these things, and I will get so many dashboards built for me. I mean, in seconds for like $0, compared to like one guy that I hired, and paid $300 a week for, 8 weeks to kind of get this thing to a view that I could look at it. So I haven't used any of it for, well, I also stopped angel investing. I really stopped, and I'm still getting good deals. I'm seeing a lot of AI stuff, and I wish I invested in a lot of the AI stuff before. I mean, I am in a few of these companies, but not like I really could have been, or a lot of my friends were at the time. But I basically stopped looking at these things. So I still get the deals. I watch the markups from investments that I've invested in. Okay, so if you invested in something at a $40 million valuation and you get the next deal and it's worth 400, 500, and maybe you're sitting on a 10 to 14x, not including dilution and some other things, I'll definitely glance at the deal and like see how the company's doing and like have a look at it. But as far as deploying new capital into things outside the Bitcoin land, I'm really not. As much as I've salivated over Perplexity and some of these deals that I've gotten over the years, I've just been pretty diligent on, I'm just going to stay in my own lane and just focus on my mission here with Lightning Ventures.
Okay, I'm very interested in the funding for companies that are Bitcoin related. I'm wondering what percent of that goes for software development? What percent of that money goes into that? And how big is the effect of AI on that? Is AI having a huge effect on software development right now?
Well, okay, so everything was really hunky-dory, right before COVID, and interest rates were low, valuations were very frothy. A lot of people that were maybe pre-product, pre-everything, were very easily able to raise 1.2, 1.8 million dollars. Hey, Tom and Muzz, we got a startup. We are going to revolutionize XYZ. Okay, Tom's a leader in this industry. Blah blah blah. Pitch deck, fancy, nice, sleek looking website. You and I, we put 1.7 million bucks in the corporate treasury right there, and then we go. And for the longest time, as long as you were able to raise the next funding round, it didn't really matter if you were profitable. It didn't matter if you had that vision, because in 18 months we'll raise another round and we'll raise another round. And eventually that music stopped. Okay, so that's really where we're at. The interest rates are going up, and hey, I'm getting paid 5.5% not to invest. Okay, and the flywheel of cashola that has to come around the pike. Okay, when the LPs invest and give it to the GPs that are running the funds, and the GPs then give it to the founders and entrepreneurs, there has to be exits. There has to be liquidity, whether those are venture capitalists selling those early positions to private equity in the later stages and distributing cash back to the investors, right? When there's a kink in the hose there, okay, and no money's coming back to the LPs, they don't want to invest anymore. Now it's freak out mode, because, hey, and that's why everyone who's raising a fund right now, is having a harder time raising because they're going back to the same pool of investors that invested in the previous fund, but they weren't able to pay anything. They weren't able to distribute any money from that last fund. So it's very difficult to raise the next fund until that kind of kick starts again, right? So with lower interest rates, I mean, we had Silicon Valley Bank, we had, Signature Bank, we had so many scares. I mean, separate of Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin Operation Choke Point, it being nearly impossible to operate. That's a whole separate subject. But just in general, I mean, that Silicon Valley Bank weekend, that could have set back the US startup landscape a decade. I mean, that would have just crushed so much innovation, so many companies. And I mean, it was a very rough time. We're coming out of it now.
So how about if the price of Bitcoin goes up to 100K, let's say, how much would that unkink the hose and money would flow freely then, or it doesn't matter so much?
Well, the price of Bitcoin is definitely important for what we do, right? Because our investors are very connected to the price of Bitcoin. I think in general, for most LPs in normal venture capital land, family offices, institutions, endowments, everyone who's investing, I don't really think the price of Bitcoin has too much to do with them. But, certainly the wealth effect and IPOs coming back. It's just been a terrible year for IPOs. I can only remember one IPO that I had this year. And by the way, it was nothing really to write home about, and that was Instacart. Now the stock's finally, going. I think it hit a new high yesterday. Actually, it's one of the few that I didn't sell because it was just so terrible. But before there were every month there were IPOs, and we just haven't gotten back to that environment. There's an Nvidia competitor. They have an IPO that's coming out right now. Klarna is supposedly rumoring an IPO. I have some Klarna shares actually. And the first big Bitcoin IPO is coming very soon, and that'll be for Fold. And congrats to Will Reeves and the team. And I was lucky enough to have a small check in that early seed round for Fold. And that'll be a pure play Bitcoin IPO that's coming up soon. And that'll be a great example.
Do you have any thoughts on people investing either in the stock of MicroStrategy or just straight up Bitcoin?
So who's the best at that is actually Adam Back. You could definitely have him. You could talk to him about that. He's an expert trader, and he really watches that premium for how that goes. I actually don't know. I mean, MicroStrategy has an earnings report here, and I think 5-6 days or so. Are they going to announce that they're going to become a global Bitcoin bank? Right? Are they going to move into another world of products and services for Bitcoiners, right? That could really change it. But the premium to it it's pretty rich right now. I think it might be at almost 3x premium or 2 to 3x. You probably follow it a little bit closer than me.
To me, it seems like there's so much going on there that I have a hard time putting a value on the stock, but I'll have to look at that some more. I wanted to ask you just a separate question that as an early investor in Uber and Lyft, do you have any thoughts on driverless cars? Like how far away we are from calling up your Uber and it's a driverless car in many cities?
So right now I almost took one. Well, first off, I mean, I'm not a fan. I got to tell you, it was like, I was one of those, old man, I'm never getting in one of those things. There's no way. And then for some reason I was sitting at the airport and it was like $60 to get where I was going. And the driverless was like free. I mean, it was like, because, that's how they scam you, right? That's how Uber did it. I remember one time in Manhattan, I went like 100 blocks for less than a subway ride would have cost me, in a black car with a driver, the whole thing. And that's how Uber built that business. And then they scam you, right? Once they get you. And I'm the guy who was like, I'm never getting in one of these things. And it was like $4. To get in the thing. It turns out it wasn't actually going all the way to where I needed. There was like a zone in a lot of these cities to where the driverless are allowed to operate. So it's not necessarily where you live, right? It could only get you so far. But they're pretty much there right now. I mean, Waymo they're offering it, and you see them a lot, like in Arizona, in a lot of like rural grid zone type of cities like Phoenix. I mean, they're out there everywhere. I've never seen one in Miami. I hope I never see one in New York City. There's just too many things going on. I don't know how they would ever do a driverless car in New York City. I mean, it's too much craziness. But yeah, they're coming. They're here right now.
Okay. A separate question is, I'm curious, in your past, did you ever invest in just regular equity of publicly traded companies, or did you buy any altcoins, anything like that?
Yeah, I think you did better than I did with equities in the public space. You know, I'm 42. I know you're just slightly older than me.
More than that, yeah.
But, you know, after you go through a few cycles in life, you kind of get a feel for it, right? I think we were talking about this a little bit in Amsterdam, and you see when things are just stretched and extended in both directions, right? Like looking back now on the BP oil spill, looking back on when oil was negative, negative barrels, you know, why don't you take advantage of those type of things when they're out there? Or, you know, companies like Wynn Resorts, over the years, if you followed the stock, you know, the stock was just terrorized. I mean, it was just murdered after the banking crisis. I mean, I think Wynn Resorts was like maybe a couple dollars. It was such a low valuation. And, you know, you have these signals. Steve Wynn's buying like $50 million of his own stock, and you have all these signals, and it's like, why didn't I do that? You know, and you're looking at all of those over the years. You see the cycles, right? I've never had too much luck with stuff like that. I have a little bit in a few accounts that I manage, but just like you said, right, I'm in MicroStrategy or a leveraged MicroStrategy. I watch the public Bitcoin miners. I manage my mom's little retirement account. But, you know, a lot of it is YOLO Bitcoin from where I'm sitting right now, maybe a little bit in the S&P 500 and a couple things. I keep an eye on the new high list every day from time to time, kind of see what industries are showing up. You know, highs usually go higher. But I would actually love to get the secret playbook from you, because I heard that you did pretty well.
Let's see, you are fairly famous for this Jimmy Song debate that went kind of viral. Do you want to talk about that at all, about what you debated?
Yeah, I love Jimmy, and we're actually very good friends. Have known Jimmy since, I don't know, 2016, 2015, 2017, somewhere around there. And he's a great guy. We know his family. He's got all of his kids, the whole production, friends with my wife. Like, we're friends. And there was that one little clip there makes it seem like we're really fighting. I mean, it was my idea to do the debate because he hates venture capitalists. He hates VCs. He hates investors. And Jimmy has had a few bad experiences working for startups. Okay. And I feel bad, just like anyone that's had some bad experiences. Not all investors are, you know, your mileage may vary. Okay. So I don't know exactly what happened with a lot of these other VCs and, you know, pulling term sheets at the last minute and saying one thing and doing another. There's a lot that can happen, but he really has a bad taste in his mouth and thinks that all venture capitalists are really just rent seeking, adding no value kind of waste of space. And he thinks that everyone should build their company like Aunt Mary and Uncle Bob are running their dress shop. Like, that's just not going to work. Like, it's almost impossible to name companies that have never taken any funding from anyone. I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 if I had to think of it. I think like Patagonia, maybe MailChimp. You know, there's a couple of companies where a founder was able to scale it himself. But you're not running like a small business. And, you know, you got to think about it like, you know, you're the coach of the 1995 Bulls. Okay. You have a lot of different players on your team. It's not just one player. You can't just go out on the court yourself and just win. You know, you need people on your team. You need people that bring unique skill sets to the table, who are there when you need them, or that can actually help you. You know, it's still a chess game, you know, and there's a lot of pieces on the board and you're putting them together. So that's kind of, you know, my argument for it, is that we do a lot of good, and especially with the level that we're at, because we're a small boutique group. You know, we're not leading Series A rounds. I'm not fighting for board seats and control and all these other things that do happen at that level. But yeah, I mean, Jimmy just hates VCs, and poor guy. I wish he had a good experience. He doesn't hate me. He just hates the whole thing.
I think you've made some really good arguments to me, just as an outsider, that you have all the experience. You've seen this a million times or 1,000 times, and you have the connections. And for someone who's just going through it the first time, it seems like you, of course, have lots of value add, I would say. It looks like it.
Yeah, I mean, if you were starting a company and had never done it before, you know, you want to make sure that you incorporate properly. You want to create a sufficient options pool for your new hires. Like, are you going to do your 83B IRS elections for your founder shares to make sure you don't have any tax issues in the future? I mean, there's a lot of things that somebody who does this can kind of help you watch out for. You know, what are you doing for cap table management, or do you need to get a bank account open, or just different founder vesting schedules, and what happens when two founders disagree after 7 months and one wants to go another way. Like, there's a lot of different things that can happen. And I think that people in my position, like, we're only trying to help.
So a separate question is, I spent a lot of time listening to the whole Theranos story with Elizabeth Holmes, and she was talking about spending all of her time with VCs. That's why she dropped out of college. I'm curious, did you follow that story at the time as it was happening? And did you have any suspicions what was going on?
So at the time, no, but it's a fantastic story. You know, it's a great cautionary tale, and it's a wonderful time. It just illustrates really loose money and the ability to be able to kind of bullshit your way into funding, right? It's that, and you know, SBF, and a few others that didn't work out. But no, I only know, I think Tim Draper got caught up in that. I think he was her neighbor, maybe. But yeah, it's a crazy story, and it's amazing that people can actually get away with that.
It sounds like groupthink was a problem there. Just we're seeing it in the climate world. You see it kind of everywhere, that a lot of people went all in without really looking at in detail about what she was doing.
So we were talking about signaling earlier, mentioning it, and that's one of the most important things you can do as an early angel investor, is to look at who else is in the deal, or look at who sent you the deal, right? If you get something from Lightning Ventures, you are reading our thorough and thoughtful deal memo that we prepared, and you know we put work into it, right? As well as we're investing our own money right off the bat. And then you can also read in the deal memo, oh, these other notable Bitcoin venture capitalists are also investing in the deal, right? And then you know that they did their own level of due diligence on it, okay? So as an early stage kind of individual investor, you don't really get all the access, the data room, and everything to do it yourself, because Tom's a small check investor in this climate group. Maybe he's putting $5,000 into each deal, or deals that he likes, okay? And he's looking at the signaling, and that's just a case of all the signaling going wrong, because all of those investors, someone invested and led the round, and then everyone just assumed that they did the work, you know, that they did proper due diligence on it. And the fact that nobody was really a red flag and caught it is just, I think it's an anomaly. I mean, it doesn't happen that much. I mean, we're counting them on one hand for the times that happened.
Also, I'm curious is when you're investing, do you try to concentrate at all in your best ideas, or do you really try for diversification to spread it out just kind of a little bit everywhere?
So I did about as diversified of a plan as someone can do with all the investments that I did. And, you know, I have some things that are up 70x. Okay. So since maybe 2020 or 2021, you know, even just a couple of $1,000 invested is up substantially, right? Bitcoin won't be able to outperform some of these, but I've also had a lot go to zero, right? I wouldn't say a lot, but plenty have gone to zero, and didn't work out. So, you know, diversification, I think I went like as insane as possible. with the amount, and it's really going to make a great case study. Like one day it'll make a great data set of this lunatic invested in these 2,200 companies. How did it shake out in the end? Because I've got markups and book values and things on many of them, and it's definitely up since then. But is this going to outperform Bitcoin? Are any of these things going to outperform Bitcoin? We get that question a lot. Normal venture capitalists that are doing kind of AI and SaaS stuff and other things, they don't have LP after LP coming at them with the same question of why would I do this versus invest in Bitcoin? And it's going to make a great case study. That Fold IPO absolutely outperformed the price of Bitcoin, and I'm going to be clutching on that example for a while until we get the next big Bitcoin IPO.
Do you see yourself as kind of one of a kind, or are there quite a few other people that you know that have invested in 2,200 companies?
No, it's, I would say over 1,500 companies.
Okay.
And 2,200 deals when you count the follow-ons and investing again, right? You might invest at a $10 million valuation, and then you get another deal at 25, and then you see it again at 60, and then all of a sudden it's 300. And you might invest a little bit into each of those deals and follow it all the way up. And I know for a fact that I am an outlier here. AngelList is a multi-billion-dollar company. That's where a bunch of my investments sit through various syndicates and things on that platform. And I know that they don't have another Muzz man. And they have a lot of jokes about me over there, as well as a bunch of the secondaries was on Equities End, was where I did a lot of that. And they had a joke that I was the most active investor on that platform for quite a while. But I have to tell you, like, you learn lessons as you go, and I definitely learned one here. And this is, putting all your money into illiquid private companies. That goes two ways, and I definitely felt it when everything collapsed. So, having all your money in Bitcoin carries its own risks, but at least Bitcoin's extremely liquid. Plus, you can do other things with it. You can borrow against it. You could use it in other ways. And same thing with public stocks, right? You can get a Morgan Stanley sort of loan against your securities, which is actually not a bad rate, or a margin account, or other kind of orderly things. But it's really hard to find somebody who will loan against an angel portfolio like this. So when everything really fell apart, it was definitely a reality check of like, did I go a little too nuts here? Maybe I should have pumped the brakes. I actually thought that I was being responsible by, shifting some of my net worth from Bitcoin into startups, right? And I was very jazzed on a lot of this whole world, and I still am excited by it. And I think that this is where most people make their money, investing in early stage private companies. But I went a little nuts, so I'm waiting for that to all shake out here.
But don't you think you are unique in that you have so much diverse real world experience, that you had the bar called Old Man Hustle, which I love that name, and you were in the music business, and you've done a lot of travel. You drove a cab. You've done so many different things. I don't know how much you're traveling right now to conferences and talking to so many people each year. That don't you think that experience is helping you to figure out what's happening in the world?
Totally. And it's a unique sort of weird hodgepodge of experience that I've got my whole life. And I enjoy that. That's who I am. I remember when we owned the cafe in New York, I was in the basement, my wife was running the cafe, and I was investing heavily, right? I'm reading deals, I'm learning as much as I can about investing. And I was getting restaurant tech after restaurant tech of deals. It's this platform, it's that platform, it's DoorDash, it's Grubhub, it's Schmublub, it's this and that, a million of them, right? Grubhub for catering, and the Cater Cow, and this cow, and that cow, and Forkable, and blah, blah, blah. It was all restaurant tech. Order Mark, right? Getting all of your your Uber Eats, this, that, and the other, getting all of that on one tablet, right? All of these problems that we're literally having upstairs in the cafe. I'm in the basement doing my thing and investing. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, listen, I want to sign up for every freaking restaurant tech food thing that there is. Because these are all the deals that I'm getting right now. Is just restaurant tech, restaurant tech. Every damn food delivery, whatever. Food's coming in a freaking little robot that's coming down the street and it's coming through people. And I want to sign up. And she thought I was nuts. I drove the entire staff nuts. I drove everyone nuts. And then you know what happened? COVID. And all of a sudden, the little cafe who was on 75 different websites set up pictures, descriptions, all of our funny shit that we had with the cafe set up and ready. We just blew up, right? Because I was ready and I was in the position for that. You know, those amazing, the delis that have been there for 50, 60 years, and you know the people, and I love New York, and I love a lot of those people, and they all got murdered. They all closed down, right? Because they have no clue about online delivery. So, yeah, I love it because you can stay one step ahead of everything that's going on in your industry. So, yeah, I think it does, make you a more well-rounded investor and more clued in with what people are doing in the world.
Yeah. So again, you really have seen the tech that's probably going to be rolled out in the next 10 years. You've seen tons of companies working on that already, right? So you have an idea, a better idea, way better than I do about what's coming next, right?
Well, I mean, I'd like to think so, and you certainly could too. And it's in literally every industry, right? I mean, I'm just glancing at my sheet right now because you had me, I just opened it for a minute, but male contraceptives, right? Male contraceptive companies, like, I get it. I invested in it twice. Ghost kitchens, right? If you wanted a restaurant, but you didn't want to actually have a restaurant, you wanted to like have a little mini kitchen where you could just do deliveries and send them out, right? So it's like a fake ghost kitchen type of restaurant. We're in those, in those too. The type of things like Poshmark, like reselling clothes, like those type of stuff. Healing and medical startups, like even Crowd Health, which is a Lightning Ventures company, reinventing healthcare in a different sort of crowdsourced model. Electric airplanes, all that's nonsense. They're coming. The drone robots that will eventually be bringing your Amazon packages and all that stuff. Synthetic diamonds, lab grown diamonds. I mean, men's face crap. I mean, you just like literally get to see everything that's going on in the world, and I like that. I mean, like we were talking about alcohol, I think. For a while ago, the trend was high alcohol content, right? All of a sudden, beers had like 14% alcohol, and that was the cool thing, was these beers with this really high. And now you're seeing the opposite. Now you're seeing a lot of really craft good beers that have little to zero alcohol. Like, I've invested in some of these companies. They make alcohol-free tequila, alcohol-free vodka, whatever, and they've come a long way, right? So you just kind of see the trends as they start to develop, and I don't know, I love it, man.
Do you have any thoughts on Musk's Optimus robots, whether they're going to take over and be in our houses in 10 years?
If the Optimus robot is giving massages and there's a good financing plan, that's going to be a game changer. Yeah, I mean, that's great, right? And that's how it starts. Are you a big sci-fi guy, Tom?
I am not, no.
Okay. Yeah, well, I wasn't either, but I just kind of really started catching up in my later years of just really appreciating sci-fi, whether it's, Terminator and all of these type of things. Everyone's seen those movies. But, it starts out as a fun, friendly C-3PO that's going to do your dishes and maybe, mow the lawn and fold the clothes. Okay, I don't know what comes after that. But having one of those in the house, I mean, it's just we're moving at such an epic pace with technology. And, you know, everyone always says it's always the most exciting time to be alive, right? And probably the year 1235, they were sitting around saying, man, this is the most exciting time to be alive. But it's kind of terrifying. It's kind of terrifying where it can go with the weapons. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the videos and stuff that's out there. And, you know, I mean, you could still get away with stuff, you know, in the 90s. I don't know if you're ever going to be able to get away with anything. I mean, is there just going to be constant, you know, if I double park for 10 minutes, am I going to have a ticket because of some, you know, sonar radiation freaking thing? I mean, are you going to be able to do anything? Are you going to be able to go anywhere without having your face scanned, without them knowing every single thing about you? That's not fun. Okay. You know, the big thing that you and I could probably remember was the photo red light and the photo radar cameras. And when those came out, the photo speeding ticket kind of things, that was like a major deal. And now they have everything. They know everything that you're doing all day. And is the IRS going to use AI for auditing purposes? Because if they were smart, I mean, shit, they used AI for auditing. They'd probably do a lot better, you know, in terms of who they're targeting and what they're doing. But it's kind of scary.
There was this little incident where I was riding in a Tesla Uber in Amsterdam, and the driver volunteered to me that she got a call from the police, and they said there had been a fight on the streets a few days before, and the police wanted to come to her house and look through her Tesla footage, and they did to find out what happened. So I don't know how the police knew that she had been driving by, I don't know, license plate recognition or something. But anyway, it's kind of a brave new world that's how they could get footage of a fight from a car that was driving by randomly.
Yeah. And you might have stuff to do that day. You might not want to deal with the police in their fight. You might be busy.
Do you have any thoughts about the big picture here with Bitcoin and the fiat currency, et cetera, how this whole thing is going to play out? What's the world going to be like 10 or 20 years from now? Any thoughts on if Bitcoin is going to take over?
Well, that depends. Are you a doom porn kind of guy? I mean,
50%.
50%. Well, I remember, you know, in the 08, 09, I mean, I had a bankruptcy. I remember I had it was called the ninja loan. It was no income, no job, no asset. And you can go to 120% LTV. That was freaking great. No, but you know, you end up doing cash out refis, and you know, it's like telling a child you can have as much candy as you want. And eventually it doesn't work out. And just then you become a gold bug, right? That's what I did. It was gold and silver, and Max Kaiser had this whole crash JP Morgan buy silver campaign. He was touring on it, actually. He went out and did like these things with like a fake Blythe Masters dressed in silver. And, you know, it was all about buying silver then. Silver should be $500 an ounce. We're all waiting for silver to be $500 an ounce, and the suppression. And that gets you into the precious metals and kind of sound money. And then you're on zero hedge every day, and you're reading kind of just like the end of the world and everything's over, and it's, you know, and I don't really think that that's healthy now, like years later. I like to glance at some of those things. I like to glance at zero hedge and read some of the takes and things, but just to think that it's all going to like really melt down and just be over with overnight and have like a hyperinflation. I personally don't think that's going to happen. I'm not a smart macro guy like a lot of these others, like Dylan LeClaire and Lynn Alden. You know, they're experts in this field. But just my take is, I think it's going to be a slow pot burning. I mean, it was freaking $37 they were trying to charge for a hamburger in the airport on the layover from Europe heading back from Amsterdam. I don't know if that was just a weird stand or what, but I think it's just going to be a lot of the slow pot boiling, and I think that Bitcoin is going to eventually have probably a nice correction again and trace out everything that's happened before. You know, do we go up to 260,000 and then do we go back down to 58K? It wouldn't it wouldn't shock if it did, because that's what's happened every time. So are they going to be able to do lending right on Bitcoin this time around? It's a very sensitive subject after, FTX and BlockFi and everything that happened before. But are people going to be able to really use it more as a tool and not face rehypothecation? I definitely think that Bitcoin is here to stay. And I think that we're at an inflection point, like in the 90s with the internet. Not everyone had the internet connection in their house. Maybe they didn't have an ISP at the time, but everyone had heard about it. And I think that's where we're at with Bitcoin, where everyone has pretty much heard about it, even if they don't have it. And I think that it's an exciting time. It's just ready for takeoff.
I think I saw you put up a slide related to that somewhere in the last maybe couple of years, showing the adoption of the internet and the adoption of Bitcoin. And at that time, Bitcoin was maybe internet 1999, something like that.
Well, absolutely. That's my whole thesis for investing in Bitcoin startups, in these companies, whether they're exchanges in Brazil or US, or, they're doing infrastructure like open nodes and IBEXs and these type of companies. That's exactly where we're at, because in those 90s, you could invest in, you had Netscape, AOL, you had Microsoft, you had Cisco Systems, you had all of these type of things, right? Hardware, software, and you didn't just, it wasn't internet, right? If internet was a currency, you probably could have just bought internet, right? But instead you had everything happening around it. And I think that's exactly where we're at right now. They're not all going to be massive winners. They're not even all going to survive, but the ones that are in this Bitcoin future are going to be big outcomes and big returns, and will far outpace the price of Bitcoin. I was talking to someone the other day, and sentiment is not great amongst investors. Okay. It's like people need to start getting some liquidity back. And I was talking to an investor the other day, and he wasn't really feeling great about where everything's at. And we have a portfolio company, Relay, out of they're a Swiss company. They sell Bitcoin, European exchange. They're on fire. And Relay's probably up 6x since we first invested. And Bitcoin's maybe doubled, but it's not a liquidity event. Like it's still on paper, and a lot of things can still happen. But when you have a company that goes from $10 million to $700 million, okay, those are the type of outcomes and that we want, and we think that we're going to get by investing in Bitcoin companies.
So do you have any thoughts on the big picture of the U.S. printing $1 trillion every 100 days? How many 100-day periods can they keep doing that before the whole thing collapses? Because I don't know the answer.
No, I have no thoughts on that.
But I also don't have thoughts as to, if it does collapse, what does that do to Bitcoin? I guess people are going to want to get liquidity even from their Bitcoin.
But tell me, what does a collapse look like? Is a collapse like, are they seizing 401ks? Is it World War III? Is it like internet power? Are we all like in a Mad Max future? Like when people use the word collapse, like what does that mean? Does Trump get in office and then the stock market tanks and he's the scapegoat, right? That would be perfect. Okay, if all of a sudden someone didn't get bailed out and something didn't happen and it led to, a reset or whatever. But you tell me, what does that look like on the collapse? What is a collapse? Like there's no dollars, like it's Zimbabwe, you want to buy a hamburger and you got a wheelbarrow full of notes? I mean, like what type of collapse are we looking at?
Yeah, I do not know the answer. I don't know if anybody knows the answer. I've heard Ed Dowd talk about it, I think. I don't, I trust him on a lot of things, but I don't know.
Right, but like, aren't you sick of waiting for the collapse? Because like I remember, Alex Jones and Jim Rickards and the gold people, and they've all been around 08, 09, it's always right around the corner. It's the collapse is tomorrow. In fact, that kept me out of the stock market for a long time, unfortunately, because of the collapse being right around the corner. And that would have been the absolute best time to get back in the stock market, was when I was convinced that it was all going to collapse, right? So, you know, I really don't know, but I don't want to like live my life thinking that we're going to collapse, right? I would much rather just be happy.
We're coming up on an hour. I've really enjoyed this. You are an incredibly interesting guy that knows a lot of stuff. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Really?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having a little guy like me on your show. I wish I knew about climate, but I got to get my my info from you on that.
Or AI. I don't know if AI knows climate yet, but
I mean, that's the funny part is you'd get a lot of great biased results. You should actually spend a few minutes.
I have actually, yeah.
Is it telling you all sorts of?
Oh, I mean, it's changed. At first, it was saying, of course, like the deniers are kind of the Antichrist. It seems like it's getting a little better, but it was really bad about a few months ago.
Really?
Chat GPT is the one I've been looking at the most. It seems like it's gotten more sane, but it still doesn't understand. It still thinks there's a climate crisis, for example, but that's a separate deal.
I mean, yeah, I can't imagine like how they're ever going to dial that back. You know, I think if you actually use Grok, it's probably less biased. But, you know, all these questions of like, you know, what would happen if I do this, that, or save the world? And the thing tells you, you know, it's completely inappropriate to, you know, call someone a bad name, you know, so the world ends. But those unfortunately are that's where we're living in, man.
Yeah, I'll have to keep working on that. So I will let you go, but thank you a ton again, and have a good trip, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Right, goodbye.
Cheers.